Hold on. 1, 2, 1, 2. Wait. Let me go ahead and bring on. All right, brother Spencer, can you hear me, man?
Yeah, I got you. I got you now. There you are.
Gotcha. Is my mic good? Is it going in and out, or am I good?
No, you're good. I think there might be a little bit of a delay, but I can hear you. So we can work with it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Again, man, my co-host today is Spencer Percy from the Hawksbeat podcast. I appreciate him from checking us out today and talking a little Charlotte Hornets, man. So tell me just briefly, man, a little bit about the Hawksbeat podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are part of the Blue Wire Network, which has got some NBA podcast, NFL, fantasy. It's got a ton of stuff with some really big hosts now. Greg Olson was the most recent, I think, big announcement for the network. Started his own pod. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. We cover the Charlotte Hornets. We nerd out. You know, there's not a lot of diehard Charlotte Hornets podcast out there. It's really us and just another one that I'm aware of. So it's myself, two co-hosts, Richie Randall and Brian Geisinger. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can check us out at Hawksbeat, at Hawksbeat Pod on Twitter. And, you know, we've been pumping out about 2 episodes per week, really since draft and free agency. So it's good stuff. I've been doing this, writing or podcasting, one or the other, for about 10 years on the Hornets and Bobcats a few moons ago. So no bad Charlotte basketball, probably a little too well sometimes, but it's fun.
That's awesome, man. Appreciate you for joining me tonight, man. Let's jump right into it, man. Last season, the Hornets 23-42, actually 9th in the East, man, on the cusp of getting to the bubble. Didn't quite make it. You're kind of in the same tier as the Hawks last year, on the outside looking in. And the goal this year for, I know, the Hawks and a lot of those teams in the East is just trying to make it into the dance. This year, the playoff, the whole thing is changed with the play-in from 7 to 10. Tell me some things that went good. Let's talk a little bit about the good and the bad of last year, man. What were some of the things that the Hornets did well?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, considering the expectations coming into last season, I would say the Hornets, it was mostly good. You know, I don't think that anyone saw Devontae Graham, you know, bursting onto the scene the way he did. You know, to finish 5th in most improved player voting was a little bit of a slap in the face, I think, to Devontae, who, you know, shot under 30% from 3, you know, his rookie season, and, you know, averaged less than 4 points a game or whatever it was, to, you know, a season later, average around 18 points a game. And really, he was one of the best volume 3-point bombers in the league. You know, so like for him to burst on the scene was a huge win for Charlotte. I think Terry Rozier came in and played a lot better than maybe some folks were expecting. You know, the Hornets kind of got made fun of when they signed him to that sign and trade contract, but he was also one of the best catch and shoot, you know, bombers in the league. And then PJ Washington. I mean, I think that probably even over Devontae was the real bright spot for Charlotte last year. You know, getting him late in the lottery. I do not think that there were any high expectations from him, even from the you know, the draft scouts that really know their stuff. And he came in and showed he can be a super versatile offensive and defensive player. And I think PJ is definitely someone that the Hornets are going to build around moving forward. You know, and other than that, it was like everything on the margins. I mean, the Hornets, there weren't expectations. So Jalen McDaniels, Cody Martin, Caleb Martin got in and played some good basketball. So it's just these developmental young guys that it just feels like the Hornets kind of just hit a bunch of singles with players like that. And so if they can build on that from last season with the additions of Hayward and LaMelo Ball, I mean, I think there's a chance this team can be a top 10 team in the East.
Was there a situation, I know with the Hawks and teams, there's really not much gray area in the NBA. I mean, you look at teams that are like kind of where the Hornets and where the Hawks are. A lot of times it comes down to they'll hang with the team, but the small things, the closing out games, the lack of defense. Would you say that's kind of the same thing with the Hornets?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, though, like that's how they got to 23 wins before the season was suspended last year. Like the Hornets were one of the best clutch offensive teams in the league, which nobody would have expected. Like when, if you would have told somebody at the beginning of the season, you'd be like, yeah, and that's mostly because of Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier and how well they shot the ball late in games. Like, everybody would have been like, no way, that can't be true. So it's weird because the Hornets actually were pretty good at closing games a year ago. That's probably not sustainable. That's probably a little bit of luck. But like I said, with the additions the Hornets made, you would think in theory they can build off of that. Defense, to your other point, that was definitely a concern last season. I mean, they didn't have any wings that could keep the ball in front. They didn't have any wings that were long and rangy. And that continues to be a concern moving forward for the Hornets. But James Borrego, the head coach, he wants to play, and he keeps saying it, positionless basketball. So meaning, he wants multiple guys that are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" on the floor together that can switch across 4 or 5 positions and really speed the game up. So, and they've got a few more of those pieces now. So I think they finished 23rd or 24th in defense before the bubble, which, I mean, a lot of people I think would have thought Charlotte was going to finish 30th in defense. So I think they can build on that too. But yeah, anyways, I digress. A lot of luck, I think, for Charlotte in those games last season. But, there was also a lot of growth. So you just kind of have to hope that continues going into this season.
I want to talk a little bit about your draft picks before we get into the roster. You guys obviously drafted LaMelo Ball. That is kind of the big pick. But you guys actually have 3 other guys outside of LaMelo. I don't know much about. You guys had the 32nd, 42nd, and 56th. You bring in all 4 of those guys. Did you guys sign all 4 of them, or some of them on 2-way, or what's the deal with the other 3 really?
Yeah, so Grant Riller, who's Charlotte pick 56, he's on a 2-way. The other 2 second-round picks, Nick Richards, who Charlotte traded up into the top 45 to draft, and then Vernon Carey, both sign guaranteed contracts. So they will be on the full 14, 15, wherever the roster lands. They'll be on the regular season roster. So it was a little surprised to see him spend 2 second-round draft picks on centers, but we'll see how that works out. But yeah, they invested in 2 of those 3 second-round picks. And the kid from College Charleston, Grant Riller, is a really, really good player. I mean, I think that Draft Nicks really thought that a lot of them that maybe he was one of the more versatile scoring guards in the draft. So I do think he eventually will get a chance with Charlotte.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on LaMelo, man? Did you like the pick? Did you kind of know that that's kind of where they were going? It was a lot of uncertainty going into this draft, and no one really knew who was going to go first or second, or there was a lot of talk about LaMelo going anywhere from like 1 to 10. What are your thoughts on LaMelo and the pick, and then how is he going to fit in Charlotte?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I see the talent and I see the upside. I mean, 6'7", 6'8", athletic wing who thinks the game at a high level and can fling it around the court, get his teammates open shots, just probably unquestionably the best passer in the draft. So I see the upside. Also see a lot of downside for LaMelo, and that was kind of my thing throughout the draft process. I thought that he could bust out, in my opinion, and that wasn't really talked about very much, or at least I didn't think enough during the process. So that scared me. So I'm probably not as high on LaMelo as most, but I do think that Charlotte ended up with the highest. I think it's a toss-up between him and Edwards, but it's arguable they ended up with the highest upside player in the draft, and Charlotte badly needed that. And he's a great fit on this roster. Like I said earlier, Borrego wants to play positionless basketball. You add a 6'8", passing point guard skill set wing, and then another 6'8" wing in Gordon Hayward, and then you got a PJ Washington. Like, now you're starting to add those wings and those type of players that really fit the system that Charlotte wants to run. So I think he fits. We'll see how it works out. I have my concerns, but I mean, you can watch the film. The talent's undeniable. We can all see it.
Yeah, and I think with LaMelo, I don't think there's going to be a middle ground with him. Like, I think he's either really going to pop, or it's going to be like, oh man, we grabbed him 3. But,
right, and that was kind of exactly. That was my thing with it. I just think he's like such a volatile prospect, as were many in this draft. I really wanted Charlotte to take a Okongwu. I thought he was. I think he's a surefire NBA player. at the 5. I think there's a lot of things he can do with his game that he wasn't able to show at USC for a lot of different reasons. So that's kind of what I was hoping Charlotte would do. But again, if it works out with LaMelo, he's going to change the trajectory of the franchise. So you take those chances when you have a top 3 pick.
Oh, definitely. And I think I think he'll figure it out. I think he'll be fine, actually. Let me ask you about the off-season moves, of course. The end of the Nicolas Batum experiment in the off-season. What exactly went on with Batum, man? I didn't see. I think last year, was he hurt or was he injured? I know they gave him a ton of money not too long ago, but they eventually waived him. But they kind of turned the page on him, brought in Gordon Hayward. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, Batum was it just never, as soon as the ink dried on that contract, you kind of knew that it wasn't going to be great. I mean, I didn't expect it to end up like it did, as badly as it did. But, that was the summer of 2016 when the cap jumped astronomically in Charlotte.
Everybody got paid.
Right. Everybody got paid. Like, Batum was in that class. And Charlotte had won 48 games the season before, and they had taken Miami to 7 games in the first round. So, you can see where this is going. Michael Jordan's like, we got to bring the band back, and they had all these free agents in the wrong summer. So anyways, they inked Batum to this huge deal. It does not work out. I don't think I'll ever quite understand what happened to him. His drive, his intensity, he just looked like a basketball player when he was out there after that contract that just was zapped of confidence and energy. Wow. And I don't think I'll ever quite wrap my head around what happened. But to your question about last season, I mean, they pretty much just asked him to be a locker room presence. They wanted to get these younger guys minutes, and he played a little bit last season, but he was pretty much understood that he would be, riding the bench. And if they could find him a new home, they would, but that was unlikely because of how big his contract was. And then, that's the one really big, I would say, black eye on Charlotte's offseason was having to waive and stretch his remaining, it's an expiring contract, $27 million. So now Charlotte's going to take on a cap hit of $9 million over the next 3 seasons. Yeah, over the next 3 seasons. So that's money. Now that's just dead money. You can't move it now. So you always want to try to avoid the waive and stretch provision. But that's what they had to do at the end of the day to create the cap room to sign Gordon Hayward. So on one hand, I love Hayward's fit on this team. Don't love him making $30 million a year with his injury history, but I really do like his fit on this team if he can stay healthy. So it was just the process of how the Hornets went about it. Like, if you knew you were going to go sign Gordon Hayward, or you were going to try, and you also knew you didn't have the cap room to fit him in, then why at the last second do you just waive Batum? Like, why was there not a plan? And they didn't have to trade Batum to create that money. To create that cap room. They could have traded Cody Zeller. They could have traded, Miles Bridges with another, Terry Rozier, something like that. So there was other ways to get there, but it just felt so reactionary and not proactive in the process of going about and getting Gordon Hayward. So process wasn't perfect, but I do think they got a really nice player in Hayward, and I think he's going to fit in Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, I echo your sentiments exactly. I mean, I remember that summer. I think that was the summer that we gave Dennis Schroeder like $17 million a year and Ken Bazemore like $17 million a year, and that was just the summer everybody got paid. And it's funny because when you look back on it, a lot of those folks that got paid that year, like they just got tossed around, and they were just like, okay, well, they just really just became contracts, He's got 3 more years on this contract. He's got 2 more years, and then you end up with Travis Slink, our GM. He made it so that we had so much cap room. We took in guys last year like Evan Turner and Chandler Parsons, making $25 million a year, not playing a minute, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. But I mean, with Batum, you hate to see like, oh man, you just got to waive it. Like, you wish you would have found like somebody to take on the contract or to make another move. But that's kind of happens when you don't have a plan.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When you said it right. When it's reactionary, when you don't have a plan, or the plan comes together at the last second, like, it's always going to cost you a little bit. You're going to have to pay a premium, right? And you do anyways as a small market. So, yeah, I mean, your Atlanta example, like, that's, what Atlanta did with taking in some of those bad deals. That's kind of what I thought Charlotte would do. And that's what Mitch Kupchak was saying leading up to this offseason was like, don't expect us to be a big player. We want to take on bad money and get some future assets for it. So I think that's what the fan base was expecting. So when the Gordon Hayward news came down, it was like, whoa, wait a second.
Gotcha.
So yeah. And you brought up Dennis Schroeder, and I think it's interesting because I can't remember the exact deal. I'm sure you know it off the top of your head, but Atlanta kind of gave him away, right? For almost nothing to just get off that contract, right?
Yeah, they really did. Schlink was just trying to get off the money, man, and credit to him because now, like 2 or 3 years later, you now see the fruits of it where you're able to bring in quality free agents. But right. I mean, at the time, like just like the Batum signing, it wasn't really that bad of a deal. Like I would go back and forth with Hawks Twitter, like, yo, like these guys may be making 17, but that's kind of what the market is. That's kind of what the market was. If Batum's making X, Y, and you got a guy, like Kent Bazemore or whatever, like, I mean, that's kind of what the market is. So a lot of people are upset about that, but I was like, that you can't really hate. That's what the market is,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of said the same thing, what you were saying, you're kind of defending the Schroeder contract. I did the same thing with Rozier because the Hornets were getting ready to lose Kemba for nothing at the last second. They worked out a sign and trade for Rozier. The Hornets pay him a little bit over his market value, probably, but like, this 17, 18, $19 million contracts in this league, even if the player can't live up to the contract, those are the kind of contracts you have to have if you want to make a significant trade, right? Yeah. Like that's good salary fodder. And Rozier came in and was one of the best catch and shoot, triple players in the league. So yeah, no, I'm with you there. You have to do that.
And you have to, you almost have to overpay a little bit for guys now. If you want to have a quality team, like, I mean, you just want to make sure that you don't like overpay. Right. Like, you don't want to overpay. You guys brought in Gordon Hayward. We talked about it a little bit. Just talk a little bit about what do you feel like he brings and how he'll shape the dynamic of this team. A good mid-range shooter, but he's not just a mid-range shooter. Like, he don't mind shooting the three. Like, he brings a lot of tools. I think that he will enjoy kind of like the being more involved in the offense, But tell me what you think about the Hayward pickup and how he's going to affect the offense.
Yeah, I think he's he's a super versatile offensive player. It's funny that you kind of brought up the mid-range thing. We were talking about this on Buzzbeat Pod last night when we recorded. And I brought up the point. It's like, yeah, he's a mid-range. Most of his offense, I think 40% of it comes from the mid-range. That's a lot, especially in 2020 in the NBA. But he's not like a DeMar DeRozan mid-range guy, right? Like where he gets the ball and everything around him kind of freezes. And DeMar DeRozan's a great player, great scorer. The hate on him's gone too far.
Yeah, we like DeMar. He's a good dude.
Yeah, for sure. But Gordon's different, right? Like his offense comes from there, but he also cuts. He also, is much better playmaking wise, looking for cutters, setting up his teammates, off the ball. He can play in the pick and roll. So I think that, the mid-range thing is not Hornets' offensive philosophy under James Borrego. Their threes, dunks, restricted area stuff. They had the 6th best shot profile in the league last year. But what he will give them more than anything else on offense, I think, well, really 2 things. The first thing is another playmaker on the wing, which they badly needed. And I'm excited about LaMelo Ball, but I don't want to hand him the keys to the car and just ask him to drive nonstop all the time. And Gordon will get him off the ball and help him come along a little more slower, which is fine. And then the other thing is at the end of games and clutch situations, now the Hornets have somebody to throw the ball to and say, go get us a bucket. Right? Like we can get you in the mid post, we can get it to you on the elbow, we can get it to you at the nail. You can face up, rip, and get a basket or get fouled. And the Hornets just didn't have that guy last season. So that's the other thing. But on the other end of the floor, I think he's a nice defensive player. I don't think he's elite, but again, now you're talking about LaMelo Ball, 6'8", Gordon Hayward, 6'8", PJ Washington, 6'9". We'll see with Jalen McDaniels, is he going to get some playing time, 6'10". Like, you're starting to see it kind of come together in terms of these switchy kind of lineups that Borrego can now instill, and that's the kind of defense he wants to play. He wants to switch across as many positions as possible, keep the ball in front, and he wants guys that can take it off the rim and go with it. Our point guard doesn't have to outlet, and we set up the offense like we want to run and gun. So that's why I say he's a really good fit.
Yeah, I think that. Everyone always talks about the NFL being a copycat league. I would say the same thing about the NBA. because I mean, what you just described is what's going on in Atlanta. And that's specifically why I wanted to have people on to talk about their different teams, because Atlanta, they have a lot of guys that can play multiple positions, you know, and that's kind of where the NBA is headed. Gone are the days where you go in and toss it into a center and he, you know, plays off the block. You know, you got guys that can play like a guy in Bam Adebayo that can guard 1 to 5 at the center position, you know? So that's why I found value in talking to these other teams, because what happens is when you're in the bubble of Hawks Twitter or Charlotte Twitter and you hear all the fandom, and in the off season, your team gets better, you think that you're the only team that gets better. But I'm like, no, that's the whole reason I'm having this podcast. Is so you can see like, no, other teams are getting better. Right. Yeah. So when you have preseason comes out and everyone has all these overreaction tweets and we're like, well, you know, other teams did get better, you know?
Yeah. It's I was saying this to Richie, one of my co-hosts on Buzzbee Pod, just the other day. I was like, this is my least favorite time of year, is when you see all the highlights from practice or guys playing 5-on-0 or taking shots from the corner with nobody guarding them and everybody getting excited and be like, man, I can't wait for this team to play. And then they get on the floor and like, what's going on? It's like, to your point, well, everyone just got better. Like everyone's trying to build their team. It's not just the Hornets or just the Hawks. So this is my least favorite time of year. I can't wait for preseason to start so we can actually watch some basketball and start dissecting the reality of everything. But by the way, I like what Atlanta did a lot. They have a chance to have a really, really, really freaking good offense. I have some questions about their defense, but they're going to score a lot of points every night.
Yeah, it's exciting to finally, be at a place where you're like, oh, you can be excited about the roster. Like last season, I'm trying to tell fans, like last season, Vince Carter was our starting power forward on opening night.
That's a big change,
forward. Yeah. And I love Vince. Vince was the best. And some of the best experiences, some of the best stories have been covering Vince. But he was your starting power forward last year. So that should let you know where you've come from. And
that makes, Travis Schlenk, that made his vision the last few seasons pretty clear. Vince Carter was your power forward.
I'm looking forward to the season, and I really just hope that they're able to make it make it through the season, because this COVID thing is for real, and you see it in the NFL, you see it in the college ranks, college football. Now they're starting to limp through their seasons. And the NBA, I mean, they don't play their games outside, they play their games in an arena. So now it's more critical for those guys to have depth. And now you're like, you know what, who's our third string point guard? You know what I'm saying? You need to look at these things. So you might be starting some games, if your starters have to sit out like 10 days or whatever. That's the reality of it. So your team needs to be deep this year. Talk to me a little bit about who you see the starting 5 be for the Hornets this year, because you guys are kind of guard heavy. You guys said you wanted to play positionless basketball. Who do you see? And I know that could probably change based on situational basketball, but who would you try out for your starting 5 this year?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of debate going on in Hornets Twitter right now, I think, about that. I think LaMelo is going to start. I mean, I think it'd be hard to imagine him coming off the bench. So I think if I were making, if I was pulling the decisions here, I would say LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, probably Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, and Cody Zeller. I feel comfortable, pretty confident in all of those, except for the Miles Bridges one. I could see Terry Rozier potentially starting. And the reason that Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham, 2 players under 6'5", could start is because of LaMelo Ball's size, because of his height, and you think you're going to get something defensively there. But it'll be interesting. There's a lot of question marks with just the rotation in general. Like, where does Malik Monk fit now? There's still some hope that he can the light will finally come on for him, and Charlotte can find something there. And then the other guy I mentioned, Miles Bridges, I think that, there's just a lot of questions about where he is as a player, what his future is in Charlotte with these recent additions. And I'm sorry, let me go back. Starting 5-wise, I completely had a brain fart there. Not Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward in that spot. So, sorry.
It's weird saying him in Charlotte, man.
Yeah,
so it's going to take some getting used to.
My brain is warped because we were debating a lineup on the podcast last night. So let me start. Yeah, no, LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, Cody Zeller.
Okay.
Now I think the Hornets' best 5-man lineup is probably LaMelo Ball, Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington. So I think Cody Zeller, like that's how they'll close games. I think with the way Borrego wants to play, I think PJ Washington's going to play a lot of minutes at 5. I could see Cody getting squeezed out at the end of games and everybody kind of bumping up a position just because Rozier was such a good catch and shoot player last year. And so you have Hayward and Ball on the floor. I think he's a good fit with that.
Gotcha. Just a few more, man. I'll get you out of here, man. We talked about the starting 5. I'm not sure what your cap situation is or what the money situation looks like, but are there any guys that you see in this roster that maybe come trade deadline you think, maybe this guy could be up out of here? Because, I talked with my guy, I previewed the Miami Heat last night, and there's always some guys at the beginning of the season like, well, if there's a trade to happen, then this probably might be this guy on his way out. Do the Hornets have any of those guys like that, or is it, you guys seem pretty solid as to who you guys want to keep? And again, a lot of times the money is a big factor in this situation. So
right. So I think Cody Zeller is probably like the obvious one, just because he's on a $15 million expiring contract.
Wow, I didn't know he was making 15.
Yeah, it's a final year
for him.
Yeah, yes. And Cody Zeller's a nice player. Just he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So if he can stay healthy and Charlotte's not trending in the right direction, they're not going to be a top 10 team in the East. I think that there's a chance that the Hornets would make calls and try to find a team that needs some to bolster their center rotation. And the other guy's Terry Rozier. I mean, I think he was a better player than most probably thought he was going to be for the Hornets last season. He's got this year and next left. He's about 19 this year and about 18 million next year. But it is a declining salary. If he comes in this year and he shoots it like he did last year, that's a skill that the teams are going to be attracted to. If you can, if you can stomach that extra year, 21, 22 of $18 million. I think those are the two obvious ones. Beyond that, I would say the outliers would be like Malik Monk, maybe, kind of an eye of the beholder if he struggles again this year. But there's a team out there that says he's still on his rookie deal. We can get his full rights, bring him in. We'll turn it all around. I would say him. And then the other one's Miles Bridges. He's got 3 years left on his rookie deal and kind of the same kind of situation as Monk. Like, is there a team out there that just says, we love what he brings to the table. He's in the wrong system. He's with the wrong franchise. We bring him in at a cheap deal. We can turn it around. So those would be the 4 players I would kind of circle.
Got you. You guys have a preseason game on Friday or no? Is it Saturday?
It is, Saturday against the Tampa Bay Raptors.
The Tampa Bay Raptors. Shout out to the I'm about to get me I might have to go get me a Raptors hat, man. I'm from Tampa Bay, so.
Oh, okay, there you go.
Even though I live in Atlanta, I still consider Tampa home. I'm gonna get you out of here on this one, man. Is this what do you foresee this season? Is this a playoff team? How many wins? Do they sneak in the playoff? I mean, the play-in. What is the final prognosis for the Charlotte team this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm excited to watch this team play because I could see them being, because like teams are going to have injuries this year. It's going to be weird because of COVID. Like teams are going to go multiple games with possibly their best player, out. So it's just going to get weird. Yeah. I think that without all of that, Charlotte is probably in that 9, 10, 11, 12 range in the East. Okay. I think there's a path. They could be the 8th best team, but I think that's really a reach. Yeah. But I think it's like Charlotte, Washington, Chicago, Orlando, Atlanta. Like it's kind of those 5 teams.
Yeah.
Jockeying for what is basically 3 spots, I guess, 4 spots.
Yeah,
so
the play-in and everything. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So if I had to make a prediction, I would say Charlotte probably finished as 11th or 12th in the East. So they just miss out on that play-in. Which also isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, I don't know how closely you follow the draft, but this draft coming up next summer is awesome.
Yeah,
like it is
exactly.
loaded with talent. So, I mean, it's if you just added some pieces like Charlotte and you have an exciting rookie and like things are looking like they could be good immediately, But if they're not, it's not the worst thing in the world because you're going to get an immediate impact guy this summer. So, yeah, I would predict 11th for Charlotte, and we're playing 72 games. So my win prediction is going to be based on 82 games. Excuse me for not being able to do math quickly. But I would say, like, Charlotte could win, like, 32 games on an 82-game schedule.
That's fair. I appreciate you for coming on, man. And I think we are in for one whale of a year. It's everyone always pencils in like the first 6 in the East, but I really feel like, man, you might just take a board and just spin it and just be like, I think we're gonna see. People think that, okay, you're gonna have these 6 top teams, but I'm not even sure about that. You know, like our minds are probably gonna be blown this year with COVID and like, because I mean, your star can be out for like a week or two. You know what I'm saying? And that can make the difference between a really great team to a good team, and it can make, you know, a good team who's just average but can stay healthy. Like they might jump up to like a 3 or 4 seed. So it's going to be interesting, man. But Spencer Percy, man, I appreciate you for coming on today. Let the folks know again where they can catch you guys in the podcast. And we'll have to do this again, man, sometime, maybe during the season when the Hawks and the Hornets link up and chat it up a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Happy to come on anytime. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, if you're interested for Hornets coverage, then check out at Buzzbeat Pod. On Twitter, a pod a week. We'll probably have closer to 2 a week now that the season's here. And then you can follow me on Twitter at QCH Spencer. So, yeah, man, appreciate you having me, and good luck to the Hawks this year. I think it's a really exciting time to follow that team.
Appreciate it, man. And for everyone checking us out, man, we appreciate you. Make sure you follow the Hawksbeat on Twitter at Hawksbeat. Subscribe to the YouTube. Check our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that jazz, man. We're out there in all the podcast platforms, wherever you find your podcast for the free. We'll see you guys next time. Peace and love.